Good morning, everyone. I'm News Center Maine's Don Carrigan with this week's edition of Political Brew, filling in for Pat Callahan, joined by our Democratic analyst Ethan Strimling, Republican analyst Phil Harriman, who also, as we know, are the principals of the podcast Agree to Disagree on News Center Maine. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to be with you. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if this week in politics could be any crazier than it's been. President Trump once again dominating the news in a variety of ways. His illness, his at least partial recovery. I think he would suggest it's a full recovery. And all kinds of questions about where the debates go. Let's take that apart. First of all, let's talk about the debates. Are we going to see any more of them? What do we think? Phil?
I sure hope so. I think both candidates and certainly the American voter will benefit from more debates. The question is going to be in what format will we see them. President Trump has made it clear that he wants them to be live and in person, and I suspect the Biden campaign would be more comfortable if they were more virtual, as we are with you this morning, Dawn, on Political Brew.
Yeah. Ethan?
I'm of two minds. Clearly the Trump camp realizes that they did a terrible job at the last debate, so they don't want to repeat that performance. His polling numbers have plummeted by 2 points in just 10 days or so. So they don't want that to happen again. I do think, though, we should have debates. I think they should be online if they have to be. We have to make sure that we protect both of the speakers and the moderator. So it's very disappointing that the Trump campaign seems to be backing out, but you can understand it after how badly he did the first time.
Is that really what you think is driving it? What about all this uncertainty over his health?
Well, I think the uncertainty over his health is of course there, but that's not why he's not doing it. They've given us a way to have a debate, and he won't do that. So you're asking yourself, why would he not be willing to debate over Zoom when that's a healthy, safe way to do it? The only reason would be he realizes that format won't work for him, and it'll be even worse.
What occurs to me, Dawn, is that if you listen to the president as I did on Friday afternoon, he was strong voice, energetic, ready to go, claiming he's cured. The reports from the medical team looking after him, from whether it was the Walter Reed team or John Hopkins team, they're claiming he is fit and ready to go back out on the trail. So why wouldn't he and we as the American public say, if the people who are the experts can clear him to normal activities, let's go, America?
Well, if we can, I think that's a legitimate point. If there's a legitimate third party out there who says he's safe and he's not going to infect Joe Biden, or he's not going to infect the moderator, he's healthy to do it, fine. But nobody believes him when he says it, of course, because he, unfortunately, has not told the truth all the time.
Which one of them needs a debate more?
I would have to say that Joe Biden does, simply because there's so many questions surrounding his competency and his vitality. I thought he dispelled some of that in the first debate. For him to come back a second time around and be even sharper and more energetic, I think helps him.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that, Ethan?
No, I mean, look, Joe Biden is up almost 10 points now, and so he's in the catbird seat at the moment. I think he will debate. He wants the American people to hear from the two candidates. I think it will actually help him even further. But Donald Trump has to change the trajectory of this election somehow or another. He's got to figure out some way to communicate a different way to the people, because they are just rejecting him, and he's on the verge of losing by a landslide.
Yeah, but do the debates really, this year in particular, how likely are they to change those dynamics for either side? Isn't a lot of this kind of baked in, as the saying goes?
I think that's true, Dawn, and probably what we're talking about is a very small percentage of voters who truly don't know who they're going to vote to, or more importantly, Dawn, and even I think Ethan would agree with me on this point, which is that the people who are laissez-faire about voting, these debates could give them a reason to say, you know what, I'm going to vote in this election.
Yeah, I think it could. I don't disagree with Phil on that, but I don't think debates have a lot of impact, but the last debate clearly did. Joe Biden went into that debate up 7 points. He's now up almost 10 points in the national polls and swing states. And you would have thought that the president's COVID diagnosis might have actually brought some sympathy to him, but his miserable handling of that, I mean, honestly, I think I think his advisors are scrambling. They don't know.
Let me interrupt there briefly, though. Given what happened 4 years ago when the polls all turned out to be wrong, how much confidence do we have that conservative voters in particular are accurately reflected in the polls?
I think you've just touched on the most important aspect of this election. How many people are going to go vote who aren't counted in these polls, or how many people who don't want the grief and vitriol that comes their way for claiming that they're going to vote for the president, who have kept their mouth shut and are going to go vote. And they're probably not the numbers you're seeing in the early voting. They're the people who are going to show up on election day and cast a ballot and drop it in the ballot box.
Yeah. Ethan, you chime in on that.
Yeah, I do think, Phil's right. I think conservatives will be turning out more on election day, if for no other reason than the Trump administration has made folks terrified of absentee ballots on their side of the aisle. And that's a mistake, because it's always harder to get people to come out on election day. It might rain, something could happen. But look, the polls were not wrong in 2016. They were, within the margin of error. These polls now are not even in the margin of error. So Trump is in a very desperate position. I don't know what Phil would say about this, but does he really think that if the election were held today, that the Donald Trump would win?
Phil, I'll give you 10 seconds to answer.
If it was held today, I agree with Ethan, but we've got 3 weeks to go. The pandemic, the economy, those two things are swinging in his direction. And if they continue, I think he can pull this out.
All right. We've got a break here for a bit. We'll be back in a few minutes with segment 2 of Political Brew. And welcome back to this week's Political Brew. I'm News Center Maine's Don Carrigan, sitting in for Pat Callahan this morning, along with Ethan Strimling and Phil Harriman. Just in as the week ended, with all of the commotion over President Trump and COVID and everything else, why Speaker Nancy Pelosi is getting a bill introduced to revise issues regarding the 25th Amendment and competency, and is questioning whether President Trump may be in an altered state. Is this just classic election year politics, guys? Ethan, you first.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is clearly just trying to get underneath Donald Trump's skin. I mean, what she's doing would be in effect for any president, obviously. And it's probably not a bad idea to do, but she's clearly doing it now just to keep Trump off balance, remind the American people that he clearly does not have his wits about him. He has just lost all control of his ability to get a message out that has any coherence. Terribly incompetent. So I love this move by Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. Phil?
I think this is a unfair use of political power to bring forward this notion that the House has to put together a commission to determine whether he's competent or not. Really, that's what our politics has dissolved into these days, as a way to get under someone's skin, is to use the power of government to question his ability to carry out his duties.
Yeah. Let's move on. We had the vice presidential debate. We don't know if we're going to have more presidential ones, but we did have the vice presidential debate. Kamala Harris, Vice President Pence. Was there any winner of that debate? Watching it, I didn't think so, but what do you guys think? Phil?
Well, I think for me, the first thing that they both can claim victory on is that they didn't do any harm to their campaign. So that's, I guess, a backhanded, victory. But what for me stands out is that there's got to be a reason why the Biden campaign at one time was for the Green New Deal. Now they're not. They were for getting rid of fossil fuel, including fracking, and now they're not. It just seems to me that the answers to those questions should be obvious, and most especially the one about packing the Supreme Court, they won't answer. So I think those created more questions than they answered.
Are those lasting questions?
Oh, for sure. I think all of those matter to voters. Some are adamantly for it and some are adamantly opposed to it. But it's back to what we said in the first segment of Political Brew this morning, Dawn. There is a few, a small percentage of people who are going to determine the outcome of this election. And the answers to those questions could be the determining factor for them.
Ethan?
I'll agree with Phil on this point for sure. They both did no harm, and I think that was a good thing. It was a pretty boring debate, and that's what you want in a vice presidential candidate, just clear competence, ability to step in and do the job. I think they're both in that position. I don't think that anybody cares about these smaller issues around, fracking. Joe Biden's been very clear. He is not in favor of banning fracking on the issue of the Green New Deal. He's been very clear. He does not support the framework that was put forward by AOC. He's got his own plan. Those are really minor things. What people care about is COVID. And I do think that Pence did not do a very good job of making clear that the administration has a plan moving forward. That's the big elephant in the room, and why I think they're on the verge of losing this election.
Okay, let's get to a few other issues with what we'll call a lightning round, just pretty short answers. Try to get through several of our questions. A quick one with Maine. There was some commotion this week about the Democrats putting up signs saying Collins and Trump together. Is that appropriate thing to do, Ethan?
It was fine. A lot of gamesmanship. It's hey, the truth hurts.
To me, it may play well in the first district. It's not going to play well in the second district. I agree with Ethan. I don't think they should, be taking them down. Keep them going.
And keep it in Maine for a moment. The legislature hasn't had a session since mid-March. Should they come back for a special session? Should they do it before the election, if that's even possible?
I think they should. They should have done it a long time ago. It's very disappointing. Republicans have refused to even vote on it. But yes, I would say come back for a few days. Show us you got something to do.
Yeah,
I agree on this one, Dawn. The governor should call them back into session. She's had basically dictatorship power. I don't mean that literally, but figuratively, since March. It's the legislature's job to set policy. It's the governor's job to implement it, and they need to get back to doing that.
Yeah. And speaking of legislating, what about Congress? Are they going to? We've been all over the map this week on a COVID relief package, a new one. Will Congress pass something? Should they do it, Bill?
Yes, they should do it, and they are so far apart in terms of how much they want to spend. Nothing's going to get done. Last Thursday, late afternoon, I did hear the president say he would be in favor of a $1,200 stimulus package to individual families. They should at least be able to get that done.
Ethan?
In our weekly podcast, Agree to Disagree, we have a segment called Nailed It or Failed It, in which we give the other person predictions to say, will this happen? And I've gotten this one wrong. Every week, Phil has asked me when he said, will Congress pass a stimulus package? I always say yes, and every time they fail me. So I'm not going to say yes again.
Okay. And finally, who's going to end up with the most money in the U.S. Senate race? Sarah Gideon, who appears to have a big lead, or Susan Collins?
Sarah Gideon, 100%. She's going to widen the gap, I believe, when those numbers come out next week.
Yeah, I agree with Ethan on this one. How can she not, when we learned on, I think it was last Thursday, that MoveOn.org just poured $500,000 into this Maine election. This is an example of these groups that are coming into Maine. They just want to buy our Senate seat.
Yeah. All right. Winners and losers, quickly. Ethan, you first.
I think that the big loser of the week has to be Donald Trump, from the COVID diagnosis to his poll numbers spiraling to the erratic behavior. I just think he's done. I would say the winners. I think both Kamala and Pence did a good job up there. I certainly don't agree with Pence, but I give them the winners of the week. They handled the debate well.
My loser of the week, Dawn, is Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, for bringing forth this 25th Amendment discussion about whether the president is competent to serve in office. And my winner of the week is Susan Collins. And the reason I say that is she got the endorsement of Bill Green, which I think is going to move the needle in this election. All
right, gentlemen. Thank you both very much. A busy political week. Doesn't look like it's going to let up for a few more weeks. So thank you for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. News Center Maine will continue right after this.